the second I open my window. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a tutorial on how I crocheted this little summer top that I've had saved on my Pinterest recreate board for so long. I was originally planning not to film a tutorial for this because I was in the middle of filming a vlog on my process of making this, but so many people wanted a tutorial when I posted it on TikTok, so here it is. So just a few notes about the top and the pattern in general. It's made in two pieces, so I've made one already here and I'll show you how to make the other one. But it's basically just a triangle cup and then stitched on the end, like the bottom of it. So instead of it being this way, it's going to be this way. I will obviously show you how to make everything to fit you, and then once you've made two, you'll stitch them together and then add the mesh on the bottom. For this top, I used a 3.5mm hook just because I feel like anything with bikini tops, you should size down. Unless you want the girls on display, that is totally up to you. And as for the yarn, I used a DK weight yarn, and for my top I only used 2 balls of 50 grams, but bear in mind I am very tiny and very flat, so if you are more blessed than me, you might need more, so bear that in mind. I will obviously link what yarn and everything that I use in the description if you would like to use the same as me. So we're going to start with the cup first, and then once we finish the cup, we're just going to crochet directly onto the bottom. So to make the cup, you'll want to start with a chain, this chain right here, and you'll want this chain to be the length from your side all the way to your nip. So for me, that was 14 chains. I'll just crochet 14 chains and show you what I mean. Okay, so here I have 14 chains, and when I line it up from the side of my boob to the front, it reaches my nip right there. So you'll want that starting chain to be the length from where you want your side of your cup to be to your nipple. So once you have that number of chains, for me that's 14, we're going to chain an extra 2 and then double crochet into the third chain from the hook. Like that. And then we're going to do 1 double crochet in each chain down the row. Okay, so I'm on my last 2 chains. So you'll just want to do 1 double crochet in the next chain, and then in this chain we're going to do 2 double crochets, 1 chain, and then another 2 double crochets. So I'll do 1 double crochet, and then another double crochet into that same space. And then chain 1. And then another 2 double crochets into that same space. Once you've done that, we're going to start double crocheting into the other side of the chain back down. So I'm just going to insert my hook into the other side of the chain, starting with the very first one. And then I'm also going to crochet over my end just so that I have one less end to weave in, but this is optional. You can just weave them in at the end if you want. I'm just going to keep double crocheting down the chain. Okay, so I'm nearly at the end, and this is where I just like to do a quick count to make sure I have the same number of stitches on each side. So just for a note, the starting chain 2s I don't count as stitches. I don't crochet into them, so we're not going to count those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I have 15 on this side, and then on this side I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I need to do one more stitch. And that is the first row of our bikini cup done. For the next row, you want to chain 2, turn the work, and then I don't count these chain 2s as I said, so I'm going to double crochet straight into that first stitch there. And then just do 1 double crochet in each double crochet until you reach the top here. Okay, so now I've reached my 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. I'm just going to do a double crochet into each of those stitches. And then when I reach my chain 1, I'm going to do another 2 double crochets, a chain, and 2 double crochets into that chain 1 space. So it should look something like this. You have 2 double crochets, a chain 1, 2 double crochets, all into that 1 chain space from the previous row. And now I'm just going to continue doing 1 double crochet in each stitch for the rest of the row. So now that I'm nearly at the end of my row, I'm just going to do my last few double crochets. And just as a reminder, I am not double crocheting into these chain 2 spaces because I do not count them as stitches. And that is pretty much all you have to do for the cup, just repeating these rows and then doing the increases in that chain 1 space. And then just keep repeating that until you reach a cup that is basically big enough to cover your boob. Okay, so I finished crocheting my cup. I did 7 rows like I did for the first piece, and just for like a size reference, this is what it looks like when I put it on. So as you can see, it just about covers my boob. And now to start on the bit that goes like around the back, around the side, we're just going to be double crocheting straight into the bottom of this cup. Okay, so I have my cup here, and to start I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm just going to insert my hook into these stitches along the bottom of the cup. So just kind of find a space where your hook will go through and do a double crochet. So again, I'm just going to insert my hook into the next kind of space in the bottom of the cup. And just do this along the entire edge of the cup. For my first piece, I had 28 double crochets along the bottom, so I'm going to make sure that I have the same amount of double crochets in this piece. But since this will be the first cup that you're making, just double crochet across, and then for your second cup, just count how many you made and then make sure you do the same amount in the next cup. Okay, so I've done my 28 double crochets along the bottom of my cup, and now we're going to start doing the decrease. So as you can see for my first piece, one side is completely flat and then one side tapers in. So to do that, we're going to be decreasing on one side only. So once you've done your first row of double crochets, we're going to do our first decrease. So to decrease, you'll want to chain 2, and this does not count as a stitch, as I mentioned. And now to decrease, you want to yarn over, insert your hook into the very first stitch, and pull through a loop. And then insert your hook into the next stitch and pull through a loop. So you should have 4 loops on your hook. You want to yarn over and pull through 3. So now there should be 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2. And that is how you decrease, and that's how I decrease for the entire pattern. Once you've done your decrease, you'll just want to double crochet in each stitch until the end of the row. Okay, so when I'm nearly at the end of my row, I'm just going to do my last few double crochets. And I'm not going to double crochet into that first chain 2 because I don't count that as a stitch. So since we're only decreasing on one side, we're just going to end this row like normal. So I've chained 2, I'm going to turn my work and just double crochet into the very first stitch. And you'll just want to crochet until you have 2 stitches left at the end of your row. So here are my last 2 stitches, and I'm going to do a decrease. So to decrease, I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook, pull through a loop, insert my hook into the next stitch, and pull through a loop. So I should have 4 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through 3, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2. So it's the exact same as decreasing at the start of the row. And you'll want to keep doing decreases on this side only for each row. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work, and since I'm on the decreasing side, I'm going to start this row with a decrease. Now I'm just going to double crochet for the rest of the row. So for my first piece, I have a total of 16 rows of double crochet with decreases on this side only. So I'm just going to keep double crocheting these rows until I have 16 rows in total, only decreasing on one side. So this side is going to have no decreases, and this side, if you're ending the row, is going to have a decrease at the end, and when you start the row, it's going to have a decrease at the start of the row. So once I'm done with my 16 rows, I'll meet back with you and show you how to attach the 2 pieces and do the shell border and the mesh. Hello, it is me from the future because I just realized I forgot to explain how to figure out how many rows you should do. So you'll want to do enough rows so that it wraps around you, but it leaves a bit of a gap on the back so that you have enough space to tie the top tight, because if they're too long and they meet in the back, then you can't really tighten the top anymore and it might fall off. So just to show you mine, I recommend you try it on right after you stitch the 2 cups together, because then that way you can still adjust the pieces because you should still have your yarn attached. So once you attach the 2 cups, before you do any of the shell border that I'm about to show you, you'll want to just try the top on like this. It wraps around, but there's still a gap for me to tighten it. And don't forget that this top is going to like stretch as you tighten it. So that is how you figure out how many rows you want to do. So for mine I did 16. I can add all the measurements and everything onto the document in the description, and then you can check that. Okay, so I have my finished piece here. I did my decreases at the start and end of each row on this side of the top only, so this side is flat. Now I'm going to show you how to stitch the two pieces together. So I have both of my finished pieces here. As you can see, I've got the flat sides both lined up. So both the flat sides are on the bottom and then the decreased sides are at the top. And I've gone ahead and I've just cut off one of the ends. So I've left the ball of yarn attached to one of my pieces, which we're going to use later to do the border. So make sure you leave your yarn attached to one of the pieces. So to stitch the two pieces together, you're going to want to line up your cups, and we're going to be stitching the increases together. So the increase that we made in the top of our cups, we're going to just be stitching those 5 stitches together. So the 2 double crochets, the chain, and then the 2 other double crochets. So those 5 stitches, we're going to just stitch them up together. So grab a needle and just a piece of yarn, and I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. I'm going to find my increase, so those 5 stitches. You can find them in this little chain 1 gap here. It's the 5 stitches that are in there. So the double crochet, the very first double crochet that's in this gap, I'm going to insert my needle, and then I'm going to find the same stitch on the other side, so that double crochet that's in that chain 1 space, and I'm going to insert my needle through there and pull through. And then I'm going to go in through this side again, so we're not doing a mattress stitch, we're doing the other stitch. I don't know what it's called, but we're going to go in through this first side again, into the next double crochet, and then into the next double crochet on the other side as well, and pull through. Okay, and then I'm going to go through that chain 1, and I'm actually going to make sure I go through the stitch and not just through the gap, because otherwise it could pull and make the hole pretty big. So through that chain and then through the same chain on the other side. And then I'm going to go through the next 2 double crochets, and then just make sure that that is pulled nice and tight. So to finish that off, I'm just going to make a knot. So I'm going to go through that stitch again. You can do this however you want. But this is just to secure it so it doesn't come undone. And that should be the top secured. So it should lay nice and flat. Just the top 5 stitches of your cups. And don't worry about weaving in these ends, we can just crochet them into our stitches when we come to do the borders. So I'm just going to trim them so they're not too long, and now we can get started on the border. So as I said, I left my piece of yarn attached here, so I'm going to start from there. So if for your rows you've ended up with your yarn attached at the top here, then that's fine. You could just do 1 single crochet in each stitch until you reach this bottom corner. If your top looks like mine and you've ended on the bottom, that's also completely fine. We're just going to start from this point along the bottom. So similarly to the bottom of the cup, instead of doing double crochets, we're just going to do single crochets, and we're going to fit in single crochets along the bottom here. So I'm going to start by chaining 1, and then I'm just going to insert my hook into the stitch, into the side of the stitch, and do a single crochet. And again, just fit in single crochets wherever you see there's a gap. So I did roughly 2 single crochets per row of double crochet. It really does not have to be perfect. This is just so that there's an easy base for us to start with the mesh stitch. So I'm nearly done single crocheting along all the rows of double crochet. So I'm just going to do my last few. So once I get to the cup, I'm just going to do 1 single crochet in each of these stitches. Okay, so I'm nearly at the point where my top is stitched together. I'm just going to single crochet into the last few stitches of the cup, and then I'm going to put 1 single crochet just in the middle there somewhere, and then start working the single crochets onto the other cup. And don't forget to crochet over your end, so you don't need to weave it in later, but that's completely up to you. Okay, so just to show you a big view, I started here, did single crochets along the edge, and then started doing single crochets into the stitches of my cup, did 1 single crochet in that middle stitched up part, and then continued doing my single crochets onto the other cup. So I'm just going to do these single crochets around the entire border of the top until I reach the beginning of the cup here. So remember, this is upside down right now, so our final top is going to be like this with the flat side on the bottom. So once you reach this cup here on the decrease side, the top of the cup here, I'll show you how to do the shell pattern. Okay, so I'm done single crocheting along the bottom. Now to turn the corner, I'm just going to do 1 single crochet in that very last stitch there, and then chain 1, and then start single crocheting into each of these double crochets. And again, I'm going to single crochet over my end so I don't have to weave it in later on. And again, to turn the corner, I'm just going to single crochet into that last stitch, chain 1, and then continue single crocheting along the top of these double crochets. Okay, so I finished doing my single crochets around the entire border of the cup, and to start the shell border, I'm going to do 1 more single crochet into the very first stitch of the cup. Once I've done that, I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches and then do 5 double crochets into the 3rd stitch. So 1, 2, and I'm going to do 5 double crochets in here. Like that, and then I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches and then single crochet into the 3rd stitch. And that is the first shell. And then we're just going to keep repeating this, so skip the next 2 stitches and then do 5 double crochets into the 3rd stitch. Skip the next 2 stitches and then single crochet into the 3rd stitch. And so you'll want to keep repeating these shells until you reach the middle. Okay, so I've managed to fit 4 shells onto the top of my cup. Now everyone's cup is going to be a different number of stitches, so mine luckily just seems to have worked out perfectly. So I'm going to do my last single crochet, so skip these 2 stitches and then single crochet. If your last shell is like somewhere else, that's completely fine. Just do the last shell that you can comfortably fit and then single crochet all the way until the middle. So as you can see, I have 1 more stitch until I'm in the middle, so I'm just going to single crochet there. And then single crochet on the other side. And now I'm just going to mirror this pattern onto the other side. So since I did 2 single crochets on this side, I'm going to do 2 single crochets on this side. So as you can see, it's symmetrical. And then I'm going to start with my shell pattern again. So I'm going to skip these 2 stitches and then do 5 double crochets. So if that sounded a bit confusing, let me show you my yellow top. So as you can see from my yellow top, I actually had quite a bit of space before the middle and I couldn't really quite fit another shell in there because otherwise it would have been too cramped. So instead of shoving another shell in there, I just did my last shell and then single crocheted until the middle, and then I did the same number of single crochets that I did on this side onto the next cup so that it was symmetrical. Okay, so I've done the last shell on this side and you should end up in the same place where you started on the other side. So my last single crochet is in the first stitch of this cup, just like it was over here. So now I'm just gonna single crochet down the rest of the edge, and then don't forget to single crochet down this side as well because we single crocheted on this side. So I'm gonna single crochet along here, down here, and then that will be the border done. But don't cut your yarn off because we're gonna use that yarn to do the mesh. Okay, so I've done my shell border, I've single crocheted along the edge and back down this side here. So now I'm back where I started. So from here, we're going to start with our mesh. So to create this kind of asymmetric look, we're going to start by crocheting here, doing our mesh stitch all the way until the end of the first cup only. If you would like to have just one kind of triangular piece of mesh, then you'll just want to repeat the mesh stitch all the way along until the edge. But I'm just going to do the same thing that I did for the first top. So to start the mesh stitch, you're going to want to slip stitch into the first single crochet so that you're on the bottom, because right now I'm still on the side here. So slip stitch in there. And then you're going to want to chain 8. So this chain 8 will count as 1 double crochet and 5 chains. So once you've done these 8 chains, we're going to skip 5 stitches. So I just slip stitch into that first one there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to do a double crochet into the 6th stitch. Like that, and then chain 5. Try to have a bit of a looser tension than normal because otherwise your chains are going to pull too tight. So again, I'm going to skip another 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then double crochet into the 6th one. Chain 5, then double crochet into the 6th stitch. And just keep repeating this until you reach the end of your 2nd cup. So my first row is looking like, and I think I can fit one more in here before I do the next row. So to do my last mesh stitch, I'm just going to chain 5, skip 5 stitches, and then double crochet into the 6th one. And that is pretty much perfectly at the end of my cup. But if your mesh stitch ends here or like ends a little bit here, that's completely fine. It's really not that serious. It doesn't have to be perfect. So now we're going to start decreasing on the edges to make that triangular shape. So to decrease, I chain 3, turn the work, and then double crochet into the middle chain of this chain 5 here, so the 3rd chain. And make sure you go into the chain. And that is the first decrease. So you chain 3 and then double crochet into the middle chain. And then from here, I'm going to do the mesh stitch like normal, so chain 5, and then double crochet into the middle chain in this chain 5 here. Again, chain 5, and then double crochet into the middle chain of this chain 5 here. So I'm going to keep repeating this mesh stitch until I reach the end, where I'm also going to do another decrease. So once I reach the end, I will show you how to do that. Okay, so I've reached my starting 8 chains, and so I'm going to do my last mesh stitch. So I'm going to chain 5, and then I'm going to double crochet into the 3rd chain here. So count 2 chains back from the double crochet. And then since the first 3 chains of this chain 8 count as a double crochet, to decrease on this side, I'm just going to double crochet into the 3rd chain from the bottom here. So into the top of the double crochet. And that is how you end the row. So to start the next row, I'm going to chain 3. We're also going to start with a decrease. So I'm going to turn my work, and then I'm going to double crochet straight into the middle of this chain 5. So it should look like that, and then I'm going to chain another 5, and then double crochet into the middle of this chain 5, and repeat the mesh stitch until the end of the row. Okay, again, I've nearly reached the end of my row, so I'm going to do my last mesh stitch, and then double crochet into the middle chain 5, and then to decrease, I'm not going to do any more chains, I'm just going to double crochet straight into that double crochet there. So just to summarize everything, if you want to decrease at the start of the row, you want to start by chaining 3 and then double crocheting into the middle of the next chain 5. To decrease at the end of the row, you're going to want to do your last mesh stitch and then just double crochet straight into the double crochet at the start of the row. So to decrease at the beginning of the next row, I'm going to chain 3, turn my work, and then double crochet straight into the middle of the next chain 5. Then I'm going to chain 5 and do my mesh stitch. Pretty much just keep repeating these rows of the mesh stitch decreasing on each side until you reach a triangle. Okay, so I've done rows until I've got 2 spaces left. So I'm going to show you how to finish it off. So still I'm going to decrease, so double crochet in the middle of this chain 5, chain 5, and then double crochet into the middle of the next chain 5. And then decrease at the end of the row by just double crocheting into this double crochet here. And for the final row, I'm going to chain 3, turn my work, and then just like you would decrease, double crochet into the middle of this chain 5, and then since there's no more mesh stitches, I'm just going to double crochet into this double crochet here. And And that is the first mesh portion done. So this is what it should look like. I'm just going to tie off the end. So now that this portion's done, we're going to do the shell border before we start on the next portion. So I'm going to grab a new piece of yarn, make a slip knot, insert my hook. So I'm going to start with the shell border on this side of the top. So I've just made a slip knot and inserted my hook. And to start, I'm going to insert my hook into that very first stitch there next to the first mesh stitch. Yarn over and pull a loop. And then yarn over and pull through the 2 loops on my hook. And that is our first single crochet. And then I'm going to do 5 double crochets in this space here for the first shell. Once I've done 5, I'm going to single crochet into this space here. And then the next space, I'm going to do 5 double crochets. Once I've done 5 double crochets, in the next space, I'm going to single crochet. And then in the next space, do 5 double crochets. And I'm just going to keep alternating these 5 double crochets and single crochets until I reach the bottom corner here. Okay, so I've just put a single crochet into my second to last row, which means I'm going to do 5 double crochets in here. Depending on the number of rows you have, yours might be different, so you might end up with a single crochet in these stitches instead. If that's the case, you'll just want to single crochet in this hole or this gap, and then single crochet into this stitch, single crochet into this gap, and then continue with the 5 double crochets, single crochet along the other side. But for mine, since I've got a single crochet in my second to last stitch, I'm going to do 5 double crochets in here. And then I'm going to do a single crochet into this double crochet here. And then do 5 double crochets into the next gap. So that is what the end of my top looks like, or the tip of the triangle. And then I'm going to continue with the shell pattern. So I'm going to do a single crochet into the next space. And then 5 double crochets into the next space, and so on until I reach the top. Okay, so I've done my shell stitch all the way around and I'm nearly back at the top. So I'm going to do my last single crochet and then shell stitch in this final space. And then to finish off, I'm just going to single crochet in that same stitch there. And tie it off. And leave an end for weaving in. Now I'm going to get started on the other side. So this side is a little bit more finicky, but it is pretty much still the same. Okay, so I'm going to start from the edge here and then work towards the middle. So I'm just going to make a slip knot. To start the next mesh portion, I'm going to start from the edge here and work towards the middle. So I've made a slip knot and I've inserted my hook, and then I'm just going to insert my hook into that chain 1 space we made when turning the corner. And then I'm just going to slip stitch to connect my yarn. And then I'm going to chain another 8. So again, this will count as a double crochet, the first chain 3, and then the last 5 chains are going to count as the chain 5 for the mesh stitch. So now I'm going to skip the next 5 chains, or the next 5 stitches, and then double crochet into the 6th stitch. Chain 5, skip the next 5 stitches, and double crochet into the 6th stitch. So I'm going to keep doing this mesh stitch until I reach the middle. Okay, so I've reached the middle here. I mean, it's actually not really the middle, but I've reached my shell border here, and so now I'm left with 4 stitches. Yours is probably going to be a different number depending on how many stitches you have here, and that's completely fine. Since I have 4 stitches, I'm going to chain 4. And then slip stitch to the middle of this shell here, so the 3rd double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, and then slip stitch, and then slip stitch until the single crochet. Like that. So if you had like 3 stitches here, then you would want to chain 3 and then slip stitch. If you had 2, then you'd want to chain 2. So for example, with my first top that I made this a different size, And as you can see, the last double crochet that I did was right up against the shell, so I didn't chain anything, and I just slip stitched straight onto the shell. Once I've slip stitched to that single crochet, I'm going to chain 5. And then once I've chained 5, I'm going to place a double crochet in the middle here somewhere. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be exactly like in the middle. I'm just going to insert my double crochet so that it looks like I'm in the middle. Like that. So if you have like 2 double crochet or 2 chains, sorry, or 3 chains, then just kind of insert your stitch wherever it looks like it's in the middle, even if it's here or if it's here, like it really doesn't matter. And then once you've done that, you want to chain 5 and then continue mesh stitching like normal. So again, just to show you my yellow top for reference, since I had my double crochet right here, I just slip stitched up until the single crochet, chained 5, and then I was able to chain 5 in the middle of this stitch because I had 5 chains here. But if you don't have 5 chains, as I said, that's completely fine. Just kind of put it in the middle somewhere so it looks like it's even or there's even squares. So now I'm just going to mesh stitch until the end of the row. I'm going to do my decrease at the end and then decrease at the start of the next row and then mesh stitch all the way back until I reach the shell again, and then I'll just repeat this chain 3. So I'll show you once I get back to this point. Okay, so I mesh stitched until the end, I decreased, and then I decreased at the start of the row, and now I'm back at my border. So now I'm going to chain 5. And so since we chained 5 from the beginning of the last row, we're going to insert our hook into the middle of this chain 5. So it should look something like that, and then I'm going to chain another 5. And then again, slip stitch to the middle of my shell. Once I've done that, I'm going to slip stitch up until my single crochet, and then chain 5, turn my work, and then again, continue mesh stitching. So double crochet into the middle of this chain 5 here. So it gets a little bit fiddly only for the first row because it just depends on how many stitches you have left. Whatever number of stitches you have left, just make that chain, and then as I said, just kind of mess around with the second row and see where you should put your double crochet. I didn't put mine exactly in the middle, but it still looks like pretty even. And then once you've done that row, doing this chain 5 should fix your numbers. So now there should be even mesh stitches in all the rows. So it's only the first 2 rows that are a little bit like messy, but like don't worry about it because no one is really gonna analyze it that deep. So now I'm just going to continue doing my mesh stitch. I'm going to decrease at the end and the start of each row, and then whenever I get to the shell border, I'm going to do my last mesh stitch, chain 5, slip stitch into the middle of the shell, slip stitch up to the single crochet, chain 5, and then turn, and then keep going back and forth. So if you need to like watch again how I do that, just go back and like repeat the video. So for this portion of the mesh top, I did 6 rows attaching it to this side until I ended up decreasing on both sides. So I think I'm going to do the same thing for this purple top as well. Just bear in mind that the more rows you do attached to your shell piece, the longer this piece is going to be. I'm on my 6th row. So once I've finished with this row, I'm going to stop attaching them to these shells and I'm going to start decreasing on both sides. When I get back to this side, I will show you how to start decreasing after stitching them up to the shells. Okay guys, so I've reached the end of my 7th row. So as I mentioned, I'm going to stop attaching my rows after the 6th row. So to start doing the rows with decreases on both sides, I'm going to chain 5, double crochet into the middle chain 5 here. And then I'm going to double crochet straight into that single crochet, the same one where we chained 5 from. And that will be the decrease on this side. So then to start the next row, we're going to decrease how we normally would by chaining 3 and then double crocheting into the middle of this chain 5 here. So again, I'm going to keep doing rows and decreasing on both sides until I reach the same point as I did here. Okay, so I've reached my final mesh stitch. And again, I'm going to end it how I did the first time. So I'm just going to chain 3, double crochet into the middle, and then double crochet into that next double crochet. So once I'm done with this, I'm just going to chain and then tie it off. And then I'm going to start here to do the shell stitch on this side. So we're basically going to do the exact same thing we did for this side, but now on this side and then ending here. Okay, so to start, I'm going to do a single crochet into this first space. And then I'm going to do the first shell in here, so 5 double crochets. and then single crochet into the next space, and then do the next shell. So I'm just going to repeat this around the entire border of this mesh portion. Okay, so I've done my shell stitch around the border, and now I've reached the last space here, so I'm just going to do my final shell. And then again, I'm going to single crochet into that same stitch where the chain is coming out of. Once that's done, I'm just going to tie it off and leave a tail to weave in the ends. Okay guys, that is pretty much the top done. So now all there is left to do is to make just a long chain to tie it up at the back and weave in the ends. So I made this chain that's just about like 70 centimeters long, and then I'm going to weave in the ends and then thread the top. Okay, so I've weaved in all my ends, and now I'm just going to use like a random hook to pull through the chain that I made to lace up the back. So I'm just going to go through like the stitches here. So I'm going to start at the top and then use my hook to just like pull it through. Okay, and this is the top finish. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you could follow along. I know this pattern was a bit more like fiddly than my other ones because it really depends on like how many stitches you have left and everything. But if you do have any questions or you need help, please DM me on Instagram. I will try and reply, send me pictures, I can help you if you need. I also mentioned that I might be adding sleeves to this top, which I definitely will, but I will put that in another video because I feel like this video is going to be so long if I add the sleeves in. So I think I'm going to include me adding the sleeves in the vlog that I was talking about earlier. So if you want to see how I added sleeves, then go and watch that video. I will obviously do the written pattern and link it below along with like the yarn and everything. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Happy crocheting!